Good evening. You're watching the news tonight, your daily roundup of all that has happened across India and the world. I'm Ishan Russell, and tonight our top stories are: ahead of the monsoon session of Parliament, a war of word rages on between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi. The CBI steps up its probe into the Vyapam scam. 3 more FIRs registered. The BJP suspends leader named in the case. DOT panel's report on net neutrality sparks off a debate. Left asks the government to ensure that customers are not discriminated against. And 4 US Marines killed in a shooting rampage started by a lone gunman. Officials call it an act of domestic terrorism. The top story this evening, both the government and the opposition are all set to counter each other on the floor of the House during the monsoon session of Parliament that starts on the 21st of this month. Now, while the opposition parties have closed ranks on several issues, including the land acquisition bill and the Vyapam scam, the government also has fine-tuned its strategy to counter claims, setting the stage for a very stormy session of Parliament this time around.
अब हम यहाँ मस्ती से बैठे हैं, लेकिन परसों देखना आप कैसा मुकाबला होता है।
किसानों की बात आई, हम ऑर्डिनेंस पास करेंगे भैया। 3 बार ऑर्डिनेंस पास कर दिया। दम नहीं है, पार्लियामेंट में पास नहीं होने देंगे हम, देख लेना। 1 इंच जमीन नहीं जाएगी।
The battle lines are drawn. These statements from the Prime Minister and the Congress Vice President clearly indicate the shape of things to come during the monsoon session of Parliament that starts next Tuesday. To make matters difficult for the government, it's not just the main opposition, but smaller parties have also made the intentions clear about posing some tough questions to the ruling side.
हंगामेदार रहेगा। बिल के साथ और बहुत से देश के मुद्दे हैं जिनको उठाना है। इसमें आपको पाकिस्तान भी है, चीन भी है, विदेश नीति भी है, तमाम भ्रष्टाचार के राजस्थान सरकार से जुड़े आए, मध्य प्रदेश का व्यापम घोटाला है, छत्तीसगढ़ का पीडीएस घोटाला है। ये तमाम घोटाले जो आए, या महाराष्ट्र का शिक्षा का घोटाला है, सुषमा जी की बात आई है, तो ये सब चीजों को अभी पहले उठाना प्राथमिकता है।
The government needs to prioritize and engage with all members or all parties in the opposition, and certainly I think the most important issues need to be dealt with.
Both sides are busy giving final touches to their strategy for the session, while senior NDA ministers met on Thursday to chalk out strategy for pushing the government's legislative business. Congress's strategy managers also went into a hurdle earlier this week on the issues to be raised by the opposition. Lok Sabha Speaker Sumitra Mahajan will also hold an all-party meeting on Monday, a day before the session begins. Vishal Dahiya's report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Now, the CBI today filed 3 fresh FIRs in the Madhya Pradesh Vyapam scam, assuring stepped-up measures to come out and come to the bottom of the series of suspicious deaths that have come to light around the scam. The BJP has in fact suspended one of its leaders who's been accused in the case, even as it emerges that many of the accused were let off the hook as the FTF that was probing the case overlooked irregularities.
Medical student Namrata Damore's body was found near the railway track in Ujjain in 2012. Her post-mortem report said she died of asphyxia and smothering. The state government had called it a case of suicide. Damore's death was one of 3 FIRs filed by the CBI on Friday as it looks to step up its probe into the Vyapam scam. The agency has filed 8 FIRs in the case so far.
That we are registering the cases. This is a time-taking process. हम cases register करते चल रहे हैं और investigation भी पूरी तरह से करते चलेंगे और हमारी investigation की जो reports होंगी वो honorable courts में होंगी और I'm confident कि हम people की expectations पे, courts की expectations पे will be coming true.
Meanwhile, the BJP suspended Madhya Pradesh Backward Class Commission member and leader Gulab Singh Kirar, who is named as an accused along with his son in the Vyapam scam. The CBI filed an FIR against him earlier this week. Kirar has been untraceable since the scam was exposed. The Madhya Pradesh BJP says it respects the direction of the CBI probe.
जो प्रक्रिया है वो अपना काम कर रही है और समय आने पर सब चीजें होंगी। देखिए, बीजेपी के सदस्य भी वो नहीं रहेंगे और जिस पद पे वो बैठे हैं वहाँ भी नहीं रहेंगे।
The Congress, however, attacked the BJP for not taking action earlier.
जब सीबीआई जांच कर रही है तो एक फेस सेविंग के लिए उन्हें बर्खास्त किया गया, नहीं तो 2014 में जब किसी व्यक्ति पे एफआईआर दर्ज होती है अब तक उन पे क्यों नहीं कार्रवाई हुई, ये कोई प्रदेश सरकार से पूछे।
On Monday, the Supreme Court will hear a CBI plea asking that the SIT be allowed to file charge sheets in the Vyapam scam cases as and when it closes the probe into each case, an effort to ensure that accused don't get away with statutory bail. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Now to a focus story for this evening. The Medical Congress has indicated that drugs worth over $170 billion could lose patents in 2015. Now, this is expected to give a massive opportunity to the Indian pharma industry to make inroads into the global pharma market. Here's more.
Indian generic drug manufacturers are awaiting $170 billion upheaval in the pharma market. That's the size of the window that will open for them when big blockbuster drug patents expire later this year. Experts say it will not only help drug manufacturers in developing nations, but also make drugs more affordable all over.
The Indian companies will certainly benefit because now I'm talking about a huge market. 8% of the total market is now under patent. If those market is thrown open to the Indian companies will certainly benefit. And then ultimately the beneficiaries are going to be people who can get medicines at a cheaper price.
Blockbuster drugs are extremely popular drugs that generate revenues worth $1 billion and more. The Indian pharma industry garners much of its revenues from exports. It's looking forward to a combination of potential blockbusters and also products that could become niche busters for smaller populations.
2 years and now in the next 4-5 years. So in this period of about 6-7 years, many of these blockbuster medicines are going to come off patents or have already come off patents. Now that is of course an opportunity from Indian generic manufacturers to enter the global export market.
What they need to do is, the government has to do something about it. So either it can do a compulsory licensing where it can ask Indian companies, generic Indian companies, to produce these patented drugs.
Once the blockbusters lose patent protection, lower-priced generics are expected to decimate as much as 90% of innovator company sales. Big Pharma will need to look at new strategies to fill in gaps and even embrace the generic market model. Anshu Jaisingh's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
And Sushmi Day, Assistant Editor of the National Bureau at the Times of India, now joins us to help us understand, Sushmi, the opportunity therefore is tremendous for Indian companies, for the Indian pharma industry to grow by leaps and bounds. And also as far as the patients are concerned or consumers of healthcare products are concerned, this is indeed a massive opportunity for lowering of prices of very primary healthcare, isn't it?
Yeah. It is a huge opportunity for the Indian pharmaceutical companies, as well as a huge opportunity for consumers, who are going to benefit it because the affordability of these medicines will increase, prices will come down, which would mean that there will be many more drugs getting much more affordable in the primary as well as secondary and tertiary market, because many of these drugs are used in tertiary care.
All right. So the obvious benefit for the consumer is there. So where are the roadblocks? Where is the Indian pharma industry lacking in terms of seizing this moment? Because this could satisfy all criteria from Make in India to putting India on a global map as far as pharma and R&D in that space go.
So there are no direct roadblocks as such, because once patent expires, and we are talking about patent cliff, 2011 to 2015 is usually the time period where more number of drugs were expected to get off patent. So in terms of roadblocks, companies will have to gear up with quality, their manufacturing facilities, also in terms of clinical trials and regulations, because these in past few years, these have somewhere created a lot of obstacles and sort of bad fame for Indian companies. So not a direct challenge, because a company has to qualify these criteria to make an application. They have to fulfill US FDA, which is the American regulator, the criteria. They have to meet those regulations, and they have to qualify through them. There are inspections done for Indian companies on their Indian plants. So all these plants have to get approved by the regulator.
Right.
But yes, they have to meet up to those criteria.
All right, so the opportunity to export is obviously there, but India, after all, is such a huge market as well for healthcare consumption. So in that sense, do we have enough adequate measures in place to say if tomorrow a patent for a critical drug that was being imported is being manufactured over here, but are there enough checks and balances and enough measures in place to test properly, to do everything properly?
See, India is one of the major generic drug producer, not just for America, for many other countries, for developed countries. For it, we export to Europe, to other developing emerging markets. So, and we have been doing it for years now. So, we cannot, one can't say that there are no checks and balances, or we do not really comply with norms and quality regulations. But yes, now we see regulators getting stringent, more and more stringent, So these bars are, and as we are growing as a market, as we are growing as producers, as companies are supplying more, as patents are getting more and more expired, regulators are putting those checks and balances more, because now more generic penetration is happening into these markets. So regulators, they have to ensure that whatever is coming into their countries is good in quality for their consumers. Right. So obviously companies will have to be more cautious and more sort of meet regulatory requirements.
All right, but as far as the government giving a fillip to, for example, helping exports grow, as far as pharma exports are concerned, given the fact that India is already supplying to so many countries, can more be done on that front?
Yes, we are, pharmaceutical is one of the largest export areas, and our government earns a lot of revenue out of it. So there is a need for more SOAPs, more incentives we are already talking about Make in India, and this is one sector which has been making in India. But certainly there needs a government support, because we are seeing that the domestic market itself is becoming more and more unviable. That's what the industry sees. And they need a government support there to maintain that business viability. We may be a big exporter, but the companies also need to maintain their domestic business and grow that. So in terms of that, it needs a lot of government support.
All right, so let's see how the pharma sector braces for this opportunity ahead of it. Thank you very much, Sushmiti, for coming in and helping us understand the nuances of this issue a little better. On that note, we'll take a very quick break. Coming up on the other side, there's an advisory from the RBI for you and me. Don't deface currency notes. Why so? More on that on the other side.
Cancer is becoming a very, very important disease of our country. It's not as rare as it used to be earlier. Brain happens to be the most challenging of them, and we don't still have answers to many of them.
Watch Eureka with Dr. Chitra Shorkar, neuropathologist at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Now, the Department of Telecom panel has submitted its final report on the net neutrality issue. The report bats for an open and unregulated regime for several over-the-top services. Here's our detailed report on this matter.
If you use voice-over internet protocol applications like WhatsApp, Google Chat, Viber and Skype for making local, national and international calls, then you may have to shell out money. A suggestion suggested by the DoT panel proposed a regulation on the service. The panel, however, recommended that user rights on the internet need to be ensured so that telecom service providers and internet service providers do not restrict the ability of the user to send, receive, display, use, post any legal content, application or service on the internet, or restrict any kind of lawful internet activity or use. The telecom minister, however, clarified that the report is not the official position of the telecom department.
It is the report of the committee of officials which are constituted to give me an overview of what is the whole scenario of net neutrality and what is the way forward. This report has come in public domain. A copy of this report has also been sent to TRAI. As I had told the Parliament, I will await the TRAI report, and thereafter the government will take a very considered view in the Ministry of Telecommunication and also the Cabinet.
Here are a few key points of the DOT report. The panel proposed that voice calls provided by WhatsApp, Viber, Google Chat and Skype may be charged separately. It recommended no extra charges for using social media services like Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Refrain from giving any view on zero rating, leaving the decision making with sector regulator TRAI. It said issues ranging from traffic management to security and integrity of networks, sometimes it could be a legitimate requirement, but companies should not resort to application-specific control. The panel criticized Facebook's initiative Internet.org and declared that Facebook was violating net neutrality by playing the role of a gatekeeper in determining which websites were in the list.
These particular recommendations are particularly important because it recognizes that these principles must be tested time and again in the context of the new kind of offerings and services that will be offered by these service providers.
The left parties today asked the centre to ensure that internet users were not discriminated against. The CPI said it will take up the issue in the upcoming monsoon session of Parliament. Net neutrality refers to the concept that all websites on the internet are treated equally. Bureau Report for Rajya Sabha Television.
Now, the Reserve Bank of India is advising the public not to deface the watermark window of banknotes. Although the RBI issued its clean note policy in 2001 and asked the public and bankers not to staple currency notes or scribble on the watermark portion. However, the implementation of a clean note policy still remains a distant dream.
The Reserve Bank of India has instructed banks to sort notes into reusables and non-usables and give only clean banknotes to the public. However, Indians, particularly businessmen and traders, are in the habit of scribbling their names or messages on the banknotes. And if you're one of them, then the Reserve Bank of India has a message for you. The RBI notification on Thursday says the watermark window has an important security feature that distinguishes it from a counterfeit note. The public is therefore requested to refrain from doing anything that leads to defacement.
Once you write on the watermark, then the sorting machine, which is counting the notes, identifies that particular brands, that particular note as counterfeit. Although it might be genuine, but by virtue of the fact that something is written on the watermark, it is branded as a counterfeit or fake by the counting machine.
The objective of the RBI's clean note policy is to give the citizens good quality currency notes and coins, even as soiled notes are taken out of circulation. It's almost 15 years since the policy was issued, but even now, 95% are not stapled, while the public and bankers continue to deface the watermark area. On an average, 1 out of 5 paper notes gets disposed of every year after getting soiled or defaced.
Those counterfeit notes are sent separately to the treasury, to the local treasury or to the cash management system of the bank. They are accounted for separately, and then there is a process of destruction also. So at each and every stage, there is man force and the workforce involved in this. So the more the counterfeit, the more the cost for the banks also.
The RBI has planned a trial pilot project for plastic or polymer currency notes in order to increase the shelf life of notes. But the onus needs to be shared by citizens as well. Kriti Mishra, Rajya Sabha TV.
Let's now get you some more updates from across the country and nationwide. Security forces today busted a militant hideout and recovered a huge cache of arms and ammunition along the line of control in Kupwara district of North Kashmir. It was one of the largest arms and ammunition recovery by the army in the Tregam town of the district. A CRPF Jawan today shot dead an officer and injured 4 other colleagues when they were out on an operational task in Nalbari district of Assam. Senior officials of the paramilitary and local police have reached the spot. The CRPF has ordered a court of inquiry into the incident. An Aam Aadmi Party MLA from Bhawana in the capital, Ved Prakash, escaped unhurt after unidentified assailants opened fire at him early today. The legislator was shot at outside his office in Ishwar Colony. No one was injured in the incident. Time for some international news now. And German members of parliament have voted in favour of starting negotiations on Greece's bailout deal. Now, this just a day after the European Central Bank raised the level of emergency funding for Greece. The bailout deal is expected to pass in German parliament despite an opposition.
After the twin lifeline rewards for Greece from the Eurozone, the German parliament has backed negotiations for a third Greece bailout, which is worth 86 billion euros. Earlier, opening the debate, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has warned of chaos if deputies did not back the plan.
Es ist offenkundig. Das Ergebnis war ein Scherbenhaufen. Mit ihm war zwischen Griechenland und den anderen Mitgliedern in der Eurogruppe die wichtigste Währung des Miteinanders, auch des Miteinanders von Staaten.
Meanwhile, the IMF chief Christine Lagarde said that they could participate in a complete package to put the Greek economy back on track and make its debt sustainable so that it gets funding from financial markets. French finance minister has ruled out any write-off of Greek loan.
Y compris moi, parce que c'était une atteinte à l'intérêt de nos citoyens contribuables, c'était de faire diminuer la valeur de la dette. Voilà, supprimer de la dette. Ça n'était pas possible. Mais depuis des semaines, nous avons mis sur la table le fait qu'il serait...
Greece embattled Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras held a cabinet meeting on Thursday amid speculations that he will soon announce a government reshuffle. He faced a major revolt from the left wing of his governing Syriza party during a vote on Eurozone bailout negotiations on Wednesday. Meanwhile, the Greek Deputy Finance Minister said that all Greek banks will reopen by next Monday. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
On to the United States now, where in another domestic terrorist attack, 5 people were left dead, including the suspected terrorist in Tennessee. Officials say it is too early to speculate on the motive, but U.S. law enforcement authorities are increasingly concerned about the threat posed by such lone attackers. President Obama assured a prompt investigation into the shootings.
In a freak incident in Tennessee, US, a gunman shot down 4 Marines and injured several others in a rampage at 2 US Navy buildings on Thursday morning. The suspect, Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz, believed to have acted alone, opened fire at the 2 facilities in Chattanooga. No injuries were reported from the military center on Lee Highway, the first scene of accident. Then the accused drove off to the Naval Research Center, gunning down 4 Marines before being shot dead himself.
We do know that we have 4 individuals who were killed, who are victims. We know that the shooter was killed at the scene as well. Also, 1 Chattanooga police officer was shot in the ankle and has been treated very well at Erlanger, as well as there were some other individuals who were shot and have also been treated.
There were 2 separate locations. Both of them were military facilities, both Naval Reserve facilities here in Chattanooga. We believe the one over on Lee Highway occurred first, and then, and I believe this is probably public record, Chattanooga PD began pursuit of the individual, and it ended at the second naval facility.
Armed policemen were seen raiding the house of the suspect, but there are little details on the motive of the killings. Officials described as yet another brazen and brutal act of domestic terrorism. In memory of the brave Marines, US President Barack Obama offered condolences, saying it was a heartbreaking attack on the individuals who have served the country with great valor. He promised a thorough and prompt investigation into the incidents.
We take all shootings very seriously. Obviously, when you have an attack on a U.S. military facility, then we have to make sure that we have all the information necessary to make an assessment in terms of how this attack took place and what further precautions we can take in the future. But in the meantime, I'd ask all Americans to pray for the families who are grief-stricken at this point. And I want everybody to understand that we will be thorough and prompt in figuring out exactly what happened.
Domestic gun violence in the US has been a cause of concern with the rising number of incidents of a similar fashion in the last year. Lockdowns had been put in place at businesses, a college and other facilities near the recent shooting sites in Tennessee, But a lot more needs to be done to prevent such threats in future. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Let's now get you some more international news and global buzz. At least 49 people were killed in twin bomb blasts in a marketplace in the Nigerian city of Gombe. Dozens of people were also injured. The blast went off at around 10:30 at night on Thursday outside a crowded footwear shop and was followed by a second explosion outside a China shop just minutes later. The Eid festival is just around the corner and the area was crowded with customers on the eve of Eid. No group claimed responsibility for the attack, but Boko Haram is suspected for the blast. Typhoon Nanka barreled across the western end of Japan's largest main island today. Authorities say they have advised nearly 100,000 people to evacuate the area due to the threat of flooding and landslides. Flights and trains suffered delays and cancellations, and highways near the ocean were closed. Shiite paramilitary forces fighting alongside Iraq's army have evacuated residents of several villages on the outskirts of Fallujah city in Iraq as part of a large-scale military offensive to recapture the country's largest province, Anbar, from Islamist State militants. Time now for all the sports action in Sports Beat. Pakistan all-rounder Mohammad Hafiz has been banned from bowling in international cricket for 12 months after his action was found to be illegal for a second time since November 2014. He will be able to have his action reassessed by the ICC only after this period is completed. Hafiz had undergone testing at an ICC-accredited lab in Chennai on the 6th of July after his action was reported following the first test against Sri Lanka in Galle in June. Kazakhstan's Mikhail Kushukhin and Alexander won both opening singles matches in their Davis Cup quarter-final against host Australia in Darwin today. Reigning Wimbledon champion Serena Williams has withdrawn from the Swedish Open in Bastad with an elbow injury. Williams, who beat Yaslin Bonaventure in the first round, was forced to pull out of the clay court event on Thursday, 5 days after her Wimbledon win over Spain's Garbine Muguruza. Liverpool are set to trigger Christian Benteke's £32.5 million release clause after changing their valuation of the Aston Villa striker. Manager Brendan Rodgers made the Belgium international his primary target to strengthen his forward line, but for a long time the club were reluctant to meet the figure needed to spark a move. Disgraced cyclist Lance Armstrong received popular support while taking part in a charity ride that follows the route of this year's Tour de France. The American cancer survivor has kept a low profile while riding for the 2 days of the charity ride. Armstrong, who was stripped of the 7 Tour titles he won from 1999 to 2005 after admitting to doing drugs following years of denial. That's the news tonight. Good night.